Paint correcting your car. It's one of those taboo words that a lot of car owners don't like to hear because they are afraid to do it. They think they're going to mess their paint up and all that stuff. The purpose of this video is to show you just how easy it really is and why you should go out, buy the equipment to do it, and just do it yourself. And also I'll be ceramic coating this because ceramic coating is very easy as well. Just for a disclaimer at the very beginning, I'm not a professional detailer. I learned to do this on my own. I started out learning on a rotary buffer, doing boats at a boatyard for a side job that I had for a few years, and I basically self-taught myself. Will going to a professional detailer result in a slightly better finish than what I'm going to get? It probably will. Does it warrant paying $1,000 to $1,500 for a paint correction ceramic coating for that amount of difference? No, not really. But before we get to the paint correction part, you have to start from the beginning. And I started out with a strip wash of the car. This is Adam's strip wash. There's a number of different companies that offer the same kind of thing. And what this does is it strips anything off the paint, any wax, anything that's on the surface of the paint. So you're right down to the bare paint and clear coat itself. There's nothing to protect the car at all right now. And I did that a while ago. I just wiped the car down as a quick wipe down. And the only thing that we need to do for this step, which is the clay bar. Now, clay bar is subjective. Sometimes you have to do it, sometimes you don't. I ceramic coated my Bronco right after I got it. I did not, I clay barred it, but I didn't paint correct it. So either one will depend. This does need to be paint corrected. There's a lot of swirls in the paint. I could probably get away with not clay barring it. The paint, for the most part, is pretty smooth. Usually when you run your hand over paint, you can feel all the contaminants and grit right on the surface of the paint. Now this really isn't that bad. I believe this had a paint sealant protectant put on it at some point. But my point is that they didn't paint correct this first. There's a lot of swirls in the hood, the fenders, the bumper, generally just throughout the car, just a lot of paint swirls from being washed and stuff like that. So just for the purpose of the video, I'm going to clay bar. It's not hard. Those of you that haven't done it, it's really easy to do. The only thing to remember, I did get this off eBay, it's 3M. It's a little bit better quality clay bar than what you would get at like Walmart or AutoZone, like the Mothers and Meguiar's and stuff like that. It's a bigger chunk of clay. It's more expensive, but it's also better quality. The number one thing to remember when clay barring is if you drop this on the ground, your garage floor, it's game over at that point. You cannot use this anymore because this will pick up anything. It will take contaminants out of the paint. So it's like baby butt smooth when it's all done. So if this hits the ground and picks up any of those rocks, anything like that, and you go and use this on the paint, you're grinding all that stuff into the paint. So if you drop this, you have to throw it out and get a different bar. That's the number one rule to remember with clay barring. When we get to the paint correction part, I'll explain the difference between DAs and rotary buffers and why doing this yourself is extremely easy and why you won't damage your paint. For the clay bar process, it's really simple. The only thing you need is some microfiber towels, your clay bar, and some detailing spray. You just want to wet your surface like that. Take your clay bar and basically rub it on the paint. It's very easy, but it's also very slippery. It's like I said, you don't want to drop this. If you drop this, just go buy a new one. Even if you bought some with a better clay to begin with, just go to Walmart, AutoZone, any place like that, and just pick up a new clay bar and just start where you left off. And this method that I'm going to tell you works for the clay bar process and also paint correction. You want to do small squares. Basically, I use the body lines of the vehicle as starting points and cutoff points. I went from the very edge here, back by the rear quarter fender, and my cutoff line was right here where the sail panel comes down. Basically, I did this square part here. It's the same thing when you paint correct. You want to work in small chunks at a time and go throughout the whole car like that. Now, I'm not, this video would be extremely long if I did the whole car on video. Basically, what I just did is what you do for the whole car. Then you just wipe it off with your microfiber towel, and that part is done. And now basically this panel, once I finish the whole panel, is ready to be paint corrected. But I have to do the entire car first, so through the magic of editing and many minutes, hours later, I'll have this whole car done with a clay bar, and then we'll get to the paint correction part. One last thing about the clay bar. If you notice that you're going over the paint and the clay bar starts sticking, obviously the area isn't wide enough.
That's what she said.
So you just want to spray more of the detail spray. And I brought it inside already, but it can be any detail spray, Meguiar's, Mother's, any kind, it doesn't matter. As long as that clay bar has a good surface to, you know, ride on, then it's fine. Alright, buffers. This is the part that everyone's scared of. It's one of the easier things to do, actually. I'm going to explain why this type of buffer is so easy to use compared to other types of buffers. Then I'll go over the general purpose of how you go about buffing out the paint. This is an Adams SK Pro. It's not the model of buffer that matters, it's the type of buffer that it is. This is called a DA. It's called, DA stands for dual action, and it's much different than a rotary buffer. What's different about these is you see all these holes that are on the plate, and that means that when the pad is on there, it's dissipating heat, and that's very important. And also what this DA stands for is, like I said, is dual action. So if you start this up, see how the head wobbles? It doesn't go in a straight circular pattern. It wobbles around. So that's on the paint doing all these kinds of different directions. So basically, in order for you to damage the paint, you would have to stay in one spot for a long time, pressing down absolutely as hard as you can. You can buff this car out with very little pressure. Basically, you're putting it on the surface of the paint and you're just guiding it with your hand. You're not even putting pressure down. And you would have to sit there and hold down as hard as you can for a long time for a DA buffer to burn into the clear coat. A rotary buffer is much different. It spins and doesn't oscillate like this head does. It goes in a circular pattern. It doesn't have vents on the back and plate, and those will heat up a lot. You can burn clear coat, you can burn gel coat on boats. Ask me how I know. So those are a different skill level to use compared to a DA. A DA is very forgiving. You really cannot damage the paint by using one of these. There's all kinds of different brands and models out there. Some people are brand loyal. Adams is a good company. I'm not saying it's the best. Roops is another real good one. There's other real good companies out there that make these buffers. So it doesn't really matter. As long as it's one that you're familiar with and okay with using, then, you know, I went with this one after watching like a ton of videos, and I finally settled on this one, and it's been really good as far as I'm concerned. Now, I like simplicity. Another reason why I went with the Adams system is I have two pads here. Blue pad, white pad. Also have two compounds down here. Blue compound, white compound. Now I'm going to point out the obvious. The white compound goes with the white pad. So if you think the blue compound goes with the blue pad, you would be correct. Now the difference between these, this is compound. This is basically if you need to take out minor swirls and scratches in the paint, this is what you would use. The white is a polish. That's what you do to finish it with. That's to take out any of the swirls left behind from the blue compound and the blue pad. The white compound and the white pad will give it that gloss finish at the end of it. So basically what I do is I'll do a section at a time, and I'll do both. I'll put the backing plate on for one. Put the pad on the backing plate for one of them. Do the whole section like one whole fender. And you can split it up into sections like I said, and I'll show you how I do that when I go through the process of doing it. And then once I finish that whole panel, I'll go back and do the same thing with the other pad and the other compound and do that around the whole car. You can just do one pad, one compound, whole car, and then swap and do the whole thing again. Generally, when it comes to buffing and what compound you use, you generally want to use the least aggressive compound to start out with. There are much more abrasive compounds than this with this pad. Different pads will cut different. Different polishes will cut different. So you don't want to go to the highest tier possible to starting out. The paint is swirled on this. It needs to be paint corrected, but it's not terrible. So doing a two-step process with just a light compound correction and a polish will bring a lot of this back and put it in a lot better shape than where it was when I got it. Also, you may notice too, I don't know if you can see it on camera, I taped off a lot of the car around the lights. This reflector here, the hood vents are taped off, the trim along the door. Basically any area where you don't want the edge of the pad when it's on the buffer to hit, especially like the trim up where the windshield wipers are, that whole plastic panel on the front, you don't want the buffer hitting up against that. You're just going to smear the compound into that hard plastic, and it's really difficult to get out. So you want to tape up any area where you don't want the pad touching. And also be careful on emblems. I didn't tape up the Cobra badges, but I kind of don't get real close to it. And this will splatter too. So you want to tape up any areas where you don't want the splatter to get into, because it will throw it a little bit as you go along. Now I put about 5 pea-sized drops, or 4 or 5 is fine. It's a little bit runny. This compound runs a little bit more than the polishing compound. We just want to put some small drops on. Basically dab it on the surface that you'll be doing it on, and put it on like level 1, level 2 with the buffer. Also have hearing protection on. Forgot to mention that. You want to use hearing protection using these buffers because it will get annoying after a while. It's just better for your hearing to make sure it's protected. Now this first step, I'm only on setting 2 right now. 1 or 2 is fine. Actually, I'll put it on 1. All you're doing for this first step is just to spread the compound around with the buffer. Now I didn't tape this area and see what happened. I probably should tape it, but usually I can get this spot without getting compound. On the trim, but if you wipe it off real quick, it's not too bad. Now what I did was I went back and forth motion like this with the buffer, and then up and down like this. Want to make sure you get everything. And then once you've done that on a slower speed, put it up to like 5. This goes up to 6. 5 is good. And this is the part that's really going to take any imperfections out of the paint. Now that was the same pattern as what I did when I did it on the lower speed. Up and down, side to side, both directions. Basically you're just making sure you get all that coverage. And I was not pressing down on that buffer at all. Basically you're just guiding it. You're letting the buffer do all the work, and you're just guiding it along. You're not pressing down, you're not putting pressure on it. And once you've done this area, take your microfiber towel, wipe it off like this. And what I would do is generally I would do the entire trunk, not in one step. Like I did this, small square section here, and then I'll do the next section, then the wing, and then I'll go back with the white compound and do the whole thing over again. And that way I'm working through the whole car as I'm going, because I like to have the panel all done sooner than to do the whole car with one step and then do the other step all over again. I just like to do them both. Some people may agree or disagree. You can do it whatever way you want, but that's how I like to do it. Now, I'll get some good video once the car is like completely done, but you're not going to do anything to this paint. You're not going to do anything to the clear coat. It is so forgiving and so easy using a DA. It's really that simple, and it's all you have to do for the whole car. It's really not a hard process at all. Another thing you want to remember too is to always keep the cord of the buffer up over your neck and over your shoulder so it's not slapping against the paint. Now this compound's a little bit more tacky than the first one. The first one wanted to run off the pad. This one doesn't run off. It stays on pretty well. Now as far as the speed of how fast you're moving the buffer, you can go at like a medium speed to spread the compound around. And then when you're doing either the blue pad or the white one, whichever one is the same, go at like a slower motion. Just keep it moving, go in a slow motion up and down, and then back and forth, and get that whole area that you're doing covered, and then wipe it off with the microfiber when you're done. Now of course you'll want to keep the same rule as with the clay bar. Do not let these pads hit the ground. You definitely don't want that to happen. As far as doing any damage to the paint, you do more damage and cause more scratches in your clear coat by going through one of those stupid car washes that have the brushes on it that slap up against the paint. That will do more damage to your car than using a DA buffer will by a long shot. So I wanted to show the difference between a paint corrected surface and a non-paint corrected surface. I'm going to do this without the light and with the light because I'm not sure which will come out better on camera. But if you can see any of the swirl marks in the paint, just from everyday washing, stuff like that, this is on the hood. And I have not done anything on the hood yet. Then we come down to the fender. And down the side of the car. And there's no more swirls in it. Now, one thing I want to mention too is, particularly like on this Terminator Cobra hood, you have a lot of lines. There's a steep line here and a steep line here. You can let the pad ride up on that edge like this, but try not to get the middle of the pad right on it like that with the buffer going. So what you want to do is you want to get this half of that line here by riding up right to the line on it. Then when you come up here, you can get the other part by going over. And there's other, parts on the car that dip, and you mostly want to ride up. You don't want to like go over and down because it's a really steep angle for it. So if you're just having it come up, hit the edge, come up, hit the edge, hit the edge, and then when you're doing this part here on the top, it will take care of this other edge on it on the very top. So that's just a little tip as far as going over sharp edges and stuff like that.
And another thing I want to mention too is you always want to keep the pad as flat as possible on the surface like this. You don't want to be letting it ride like this or weird angles, anything like that. Always keep that pad as flat as you can on the paint surface, no matter what part of the car you're doing. If you don't, as I said before with the DA, you're not really going to do any damage to the paint, but it's just a good rule of thumb to go by. Just always try and keep that pad as flat on the paint surface as possible. This painter's tape I used wasn't the best, and I'm not going to redo all that. I'm just going to be careful going around it. Basically for this body line, I use the hood vent here, this line here up to here, and then down. Basically, there's some parts of the car it's really tough to use a body line, like the door. Down here, I basically did half the door, then half the door again, the other half. Sometimes you can't find a good body line to really find a good start and stopping point on it. This hood will have to be several sections to get it all done, because I still have the middle part, and then the other vent and over, and then the front half, because I have from here down that hasn't been done yet either. But you can just tell this part of the hood here compared to this one looks a lot better, and I haven't even hit this with a polish yet either. Now this part here definitely looks much better than coming down to here. There's still some light swirl marks and stuff. I mean, this is the hood. It's going to take a lot of debris and stuff from the road. Stuff's always hitting your hood, things like that. So it's going to be scratched up a little bit more than other parts of the car. This could probably use like a harder compound and a harder pad to really dig down and get some of these other scratches out. But I'm really not too worried about it. It looks really good anyway.
So the whole car is done. Came out pretty well for not being a professional and doing it at home in my garage. A few things I wanted to bring up. I said I'd leave some tips at the end. If you decide to do this for yourself, you're going to need some pad cleaning spray. There's different companies that make virtually the same thing. This just happens to be Chemical Guys. As you see, I have a mix of Chemical Guys, Adams. I'm not a brand loyalist when it comes to detailing or cleaning cars. So whatever products I just like to use. Also, in the video, I made a note of how the pad was getting all gummed up basically with compound. I put the text in the video and it's mentioned that I would mention it later. You can't do an entire car with just two pads for your compound and your polishing. You need at least two pads to go over the whole car. I had done the trunk area and the rear bumper, and I washed the pad, so I had done the whole side of the car, half of the hood, and I was working on half of the hood and half of the roof. And that pad was getting really gummed up, and when that happens, it starts just to throw compound everywhere. After that section where I did the hood, it started doing that, and I had to change the pad out. So I would say if you want to do this on your own, get at least 3 of each pad and some spray to clean the pads. They make brushes to scrub the pad. I don't like using those. They beat the pad up really bad. I just like to spray it and let it soak and just hand wash it underneath the faucet with really warm water, and you can get all that compound out of each one of these and then set it out in the sun to dry on a windowsill, something like that, and that works great. Also, I don't want anyone to take my word for all of this. Watch other videos. Watch videos from professional detailing places like Chemical Guys, Adams, people that do this for a living. There's probably little things that I missed. Someone that's a professional detailer could probably come in and pick apart this whole video. The whole point of this video is to show you that you can get a finish to look like this at home in your garage for spending a lot less than $1,000 to $1,500 for a paint correction if you just buy the things to do it yourself and the satisfaction of doing it yourself. And you always have the option, if you're so apprehensive about buying a buffer and taking it right to the paint starting out, go buy a junk fender or a hood or something like that at a local pick-apart or a junkyard or something like that, and practice on that before doing your own vehicle, and you'll see it's really not as hard as you think. Hope this video helped out a few of you as far as taking the leap forward to go ahead and do things like this on your own. It's really not as hard as it looks. It's not that bad at all. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to leave it a like. I did say that I was going to do a ceramic coating video. That will be the next video. This video is already way too long, so I didn't want to put it all in one. So there'll be another video right after this with how to do the ceramic coat and how to bring back the black trim area when it gets really faded. I have a product that works really, really good to bring this back. So if you made it to the end of the video, leave it a like. If you're new here, make sure to sub for more Terminator Cobra content throughout the year. And above all else, thanks for watching.